One thing I learned from this video, Ghost Rider villains are either actual terrors to humanity or just some guy with a magical orb. But number 10, Freakmaster. Freakmaster's parents were freak show performers mistreated by their boss, so Freakmaster promised himself that he would create a safe space for freaks. He got super rich, he bought an island, and then he started just like collecting people to live on that island. Some of these people were born with abnormalities, but some people he just like stole and experimented on. Freakmaster recruited Ghost Rider's co-worker, which is how he first got on the hero's radar, but then they faced off a couple times over the years. While the idea of a safe place for people mistreated by society for existing outside its bounds, that sounds great, but Freakmaster was not actually the right person to make it, considering that he ended up mistreating most of the people that live there. Not much has been seen of him since the 1980s. 9. Aqueduct. Peter Von Zante was injured in combat and hooked up to an experimental machine on a ship that was rocking too much to do surgery right away. So clearly, he is being set up for something insane to happen to him, and insane it was. Lightning struck the ship and made the machine go haywire, granting him rapid healing and the ability to mentally control water. Obviously, he goes into a life of crime with that, eventually facing off against Johnny Blaze, but losing. 8. Anton Satan. Kid Blackheart, or as he insists his name is pronounced, Anton Shutan. Anton was literally bred to be the Antichrist. That is the vibe that we are working with. Project Blackheart was the brainchild of Satanists aiming to bring about Armageddon, and Kid Blackheart was the only survivor of that program. He was a major player in Ghost Rider's Heaven's on Fire, and that's about it. He cameoed in a Wolverine comic 3 years later and hasn't been seen since. 7. Skinner, one of the actual terrors to society. Skinner was a follower of Lilith and considered to be her most brutal soldier. His name comes from his style of terror. He removes the outer layer of a human and then wears it. And when Ghost Rider burned that layer away, he didn't take down Skinner, of course not, but he was really angry with Ghost Rider because he took the last thing Skinner had of his family. I absolutely hate that. This is one of those villains that you can't ever really eliminate, just subdue and hope that they eventually give up. 6. Ixar, a warlord from another world, so we are going galactic. From the early Avengers comics, at this point featuring Black Widow, he was eventually defeated, but like not actually. He just left when he realized the Earth could not be conquered or taken, so he's just off on some other planet right now, probably wreaking havoc. 5. Mother of Pearl, again, diva to end all divas. I love just the random fashionistas that Marvel just throw out in early comics. Mother was head of a Hydra branch that was top secret, super dangerous, and so unbelievably fashionable. A body armor made of, I'm assuming, a pearl. His goal was to rebuild Hydra, but of course it didn't work in the end. 4. Deadshot Darrence, a big game hunter hired for the toughest hunt of his life, taking out the Black Widow. It's pretty clear that this guy spends time on safaris and not in the good way. Luckily, he was stopped by Black Widow because, of course, it's Natasha. 3. Trio of Terror. There we go. There is something so special and near and dear to my heart about a group of henchmen with ridiculous names and stupid outfits. I love them. They worked for the Mad Thinker, and he would send this trio after the Avengers individually or in groups of 2 so they would actually stand a chance at winning. In the end, they didn't win, but it was a good try. 2. Snow Leopards. These mutant triplets are human-cat hybrids, essentially. They were first raised like people, and then they found their way into a forest in Siberia and then lived in the wild, and then were again taken in and trained again, but then one triplet passed away after facing off against Black Widow. And number 1, Attackoid. I just love when villains are named by simply adding a suffix to that word. Attackoid was a robot created by AIM. Black Widow was taken and hooked up to this robot, and her fighting style and abilities were kind of just downloaded into it at no detriment to her. She was physically fine, but now she has to fight this metal Hulk that knows her every move. Luckily, Hawkeye appeared with explosive arrows and helped save the day. 10. Snapdragon. Aside from the excellent name choice, she also has a gorgeous blowout at all times, so clearly my standards for impressive villainy are very high. Actually, she's a martial artist and first appeared when she was hired to take out Black Widow. She did succeed for all of 10 minutes, but then Black Widow woke up again and dispatched Snapdragon because, well, the hero has to win. 9. Mr. Fear. From that series of Daredevil comics where Black Widow was just a main character in the 70s, Mr. Fear kind of gives rip-off Scarecrow a little bit. He uses fear gas to throw off his enemies and his targets. He was also exposed to lots of radiation and fear gas, which permanently altered his pheromones to affect other people's moods. I love the science of the Marvel Universe because it always makes sense. 8. astrologer, and potentially the most original villain activities I have yet to see. The astrologer doesn't have like a real name to our knowledge, and mind you, he does live in the modern day. He walks around town dressed as a wizard, like purple robes, and what he does is he plans his robberies around the stars, Robin Hood style, steal from the rich and give to the poor. He acquired his team of henchmen, the people who actually carry out these crimes, by finding desperate people on the street and asking if they believe in the stars, when really, he just needs people to commit his crimes for him and take that fall. All of this on its own, definitely evil, but he intended to rob a bank. A kind of bank that I have yet to see a villain rob. A blood bank. His master plan was to rob a blood bank of every bag of the universal type and hold it until a deal could be met. He is creative, I will give him that, but he did end up perishing in the end, thank goodness. 7. Watchlord. Watchlord fled Russian soldiers and ended up hidden in a warehouse filled with radioactive isotopes, which is seemingly common in the Marvel Universe. Obviously, he gained telekinetic abilities and vowed to destroy all Russian influence in the US, which is a problem because Black Widow is Russian. He did take her and staged a rock slide to eliminate her, but it took him out instead, and that is Marvel luck for you. 6. The Desert Dwellers. This team is made up of the desert elements, so sun, rock, cactus, and lizard. The lizard, cactus, and rock were all created by the Dominus computer incarnation on Earth at the time. Allegedly, there's actually thousands of the cactuses created, but only a handful survived. Sunstroke was a human agent of the computer. They almost beat Hawkeye in the West Coast Avengers, but couldn't quite get there. 5. Bullet Biker. From an art gallery vandalizer to attempting to take out Hawkeye's good arm, you never know what turns life will take you on. This villain had a pretty cool motorbike, one that had its own weaponry, until he had to destroy it as a distraction. A distraction that wasn't even worth it in the end, considering Hawkeye cut up to him anyways. 4. Silencer. From Hawkeye 2, this villain is pretty cool, and it's shocking that he hasn't been brought back. Literally one appearance logged ever. Dean Helm used a suit that silenced all sound in his immediate area, which meant not only were his footsteps silent so you couldn't hear him coming, any loud bangs that he might produce from a weapon were also perfectly silent, which is a nightmare scenario. Unfortunately for the villain, Hawkeye knocked him down a smokestack. 3. The Manipulator. He was the employer or leader of Deathweb, which was a team made up of people with spider powers acquired from the same people that gave Julia Carpenter her powers. The difference is the Manipulator manipulated the spider serum to make the Deathweb members dependent on periodic treatments so they don't face lethal consequences. He attempted to blackmail Julia, but the plan started to fall apart. Hawkeye and the West Coast Avengers stepped in, and he kind of crashed out and he lost. 2. Jamie Slade's Phantom Rider. Jamie was possessed by her great grandfather, Casual. She took up his mantle of the Phantom Rider and got to wear a pretty iconic outfit. She proceeded to be a bit of a menace, but all the ends were tied up by the end of that run. 1. Biocoms from Hawkeye Volume 2, Issue 3. You know, like the Mutts from the Hunger Games? It's kind of giving that. Created by the Secret Empire, these beings were created to be sold as combat units. They look like a wolf, bobcat, monster hybrid, and it's honestly kind of amazing that Hawkeye was able to survive and even subdue them. 10. The Pacific Overlords. Okay, so this guy named Dr. Demonicus decided to experiment on people with his pieces of radioactive meteor that he called the Life Stone, and created a bunch of superpowered beings that eventually turned into the Pacific Overlords. So think the Avengers, but like evil. Then Demonicus made himself an island that did get recognized as a nation by the UN, so Hawkeye and the Avengers couldn't really do anything about him until his island sunk. So what a life story, you know? 9. Bobcat. This cat-themed hero has no powers, but he is a talented gymnast and outfitted his costume with claws. He leads a group called the Claws, and they all look the same. It's kind of like a boy band, but also not at all like that. The group tried attacking an armored car, but weren't able to defeat Hawkeye. 8. Blank. Blank went from a nobody to nobody, but in a different kind of way. Right place, right time. This man happened to be waiting for the bus next to a scientist that had just quit their job and taken their work with them. And then that scientist happened to be smacked by a car, and in the chaos, Clyde stole his briefcase and discovered a force field generator. Considering he's the type to steal the life's work of someone who was just in a serious accident, it's no surprise that Clyde started a crime spree. It's a belt that makes him essentially blank. No defining features or face, just a blank man-shaped thing. He was taken down by Hawkeye and the West Coast Avengers. 7. Albino. She is a criminal mastermind. At first, she tricked Hawkeye into thinking that she needed help, then attacked him, then took over a police department, then trapped the hero in a prison break, then shrunk him with Pym particles and put him in a maze, then managed managed to figure out a way to turn herself invisible despite not having superpowers. All in all, she's a menace to society, but nothing a Hawkeye net arrow can't fix. 6. Mad Viking Tales to Astonish Volume 3 had only one 72-page issue with gorgeous artwork, and it was the story of Nut Kane, a Norse mythology-obsessed criminal. His crimes were inspired by Norse stories, and eventually he found himself in a position to become almost like a Loki avatar on Earth through mystical dagger self-sacrifice. He fought not just Hank Pym, but also the Wasp and the Hulk. Did he win? No. Kane Loki had brought an Asgardian snake to Earth, and the heroes used the venom to eliminate him. The mysterious Loki dagger was then launched into the ocean by the Hulk, and I don't think it's come back up yet. 5. Cyclops, not the X-Men, this was a robot created by an alien race that wanted to conquer the Earth, but first wanted to literally test the waters to see how easy or willing humanity would be to that. They designed this robot after the myths of Cyclopses and programmed it to attack boats. Ant-Man rewired that villain to instead target its creators, and the aliens were forced to leave and never come back, and the robot walked out into the sea, presumably destroying itself. 4. Magician. This guy kind of had it figured out. He would pose as a party entertainer for rich people and then just rob them. Not saying that this was a good thing to do by any means, but he didn't have to break in, which is half the work. He literally was invited into these people's homes, did a little show, and then used his magic skills to escape with the treasure. Ant-Man and the Wasp staged a fake party to capture the villain, and after a turn in the slammer, he reformed and led a normal life in Tampa, which is some epic dad lore when you look at it though. 3. Antagonists. I love when villains decide to be camp and make funny little names. The team is made of Window Washer, Trago, the Time Master, and the Protector, all small-time criminals that make a greater impact working together. Through the Window Washer's paralyzing liquid, Trago's magical trumpet, the Time Master's aging ray, and the Protector's trick of switching goods with sand to make it look like the items disintegrated, they certainly gave Ant-Man a run for his money, but ultimately were no match for the mini-hero. 2. Odd John. With a name like that, Odd John was obsessed with bugs, mutated his own bug army, and initially trapped the Micronauts, leading to a distress signal sent to Ant-Man. Ant-Man's Pym particles not only shrunk his bug army back to their ordinary size, but reversed any modifications and ended up saving the day. As for Odd John, he was arrested and had his labs destroyed, and shockingly has not appeared past 2 issues. But number 1, Darby doll. She was a booby-trapped, copyright-friendly doll given to Ant-Man's daughter for Christmas, including this one in here because it's the holiday season. Turns out Doc Ock had taken over the North Pole and imprisoned Santa Claus. He was still making toys, but rigging, trapping, and generally making them dangerous, so it was up to Ant-Man to stop him from making any more Doc Ock Darbies. In the end, Santa saved the day and used his Christmas magic to clean up the disaster. 10. Paraman or Reezy, the super intelligent robot. The minute this robot gained his intelligence, it made its scientist master its servant. And the scientist was either a once genius or simply just lucky and stumbling into incredible discoveries, so he didn't exactly have the backbone to fight against that. The scientist collected insect samples and accidentally picked up Ant-Man and the Wasp. To escape, the pair lit the house on fire and caused an explosion that destroyed everything but the robot's head, which was still functional and was last seen instructing the scientist to make a new one. So this robot is likely still at large, we just haven't seen him since the 70s. 9. Porcupine, a bit more popular but not by much. This villain was a very talented weapons designer for the government and made this porcupine suit with quills that shot out like gas, projectiles, chemicals. It was very cool. He was very proud of his invention, but figured the government wouldn't compensate him properly for it and decided to get rich on his own by committing crimes as the Porcupine. He fought Ant-Man and attempted to steal growth pills from the hero, but actually stole shrinking pills and took so many that he shrank to nothingness. Eventually, he did return to normal size, but still, what a way to go, even if only for a little while. 8. Scarlet Beetle, a regular beetle mutated by radiation into a conscious, telepathic ability to control other insects powered wielding super beetle. He stole Ant-Man's helmet to become human-sized, which is horrifying on its own, and sicked his army of bugs on the streets, toppling telephone poles, stealing, extra poisonous bug bites, and general issues with having a bunch of bugs suddenly attack you. Ant-Man was able to shrink the beetle back to its size and trap it in a balloon, decontaminate the creature, and successfully release the now normal beetle into his backyard. 7. The Living Eraser. He worked for the ruler of an alternate dimension, and his job was to steal scientists and transport them to this other dimension to build nuclear weapons. He got his name because he would wave his device across his victims, gradually turning them invisible, making it seem like they were being erased from existence, when in reality it was just the process of transporting an individual across dimensions. The Wasp was one of them transported to the other dimension and worked on that side to free everyone there, while Ant-Man handled the villain on this side, saving the day. 6. Crusader. Arthur Blackwood was deeply religious, to the point where he believed that if you weren't religious or didn't believe in his god, you either needed to start believing or be gone. He saw Thor as blasphemous because, well, he calls himself the Thunder God, right? Which shouldn't be possible if you believe there is only one true god. Arthur gained impressive powers from the spirits of his ancestors, turning him into the Crusader, with the goals of all the Crusaders that came before him. He was so powerful he was able to hold his own against Thor and even seriously injured the Norse god. However, when Thor popped back up again, good as new, the villain began to doubt his abilities and Thor shattered his sword. 5. Durok. This villain was created specifically to fight Thor, and you'll never guess who commissioned them. Loki. Quite literally, he wanted the villain to destroy Thor, and that is it. The Silver Surfer was also involved in the fight. Durok bent his surfboard, and the only way to defeat him was by taking him to the future right before the big crunch happens. So this implies that the villain is unbeatable by modern standards, and only the collapse of the universe can handle the job. 4. Thermal Man. A robot originally designed to be a super worker in factories and industries, the robot designs were stolen by the government and reprogrammed to destroy America. The robot was tested by getting shipped off to the US. Obviously, he lands in New York first and pretty quickly makes a mess of it all. By the time Thor gets there, it's a disaster. Most of the city has been evacuated. In the end, the country that sent it realized how bad they messed up, so they sent an experimental explosive to take care of that robot. It was less of a good faith gesture and more because they realized that this was basically a declaration of war. In the end, despite Thor's best efforts, all that really worked was subduing the robot and freezing him. 3. Doughboy. He's not a real boy, he's a blob that looks like dough, or, well, Jabba the Hutt. He was created by Zola to be a servant and has worked with the villain his entire life. Doughboy's claim to fame, other than his distinct appearance, is his shapeshifting abilities. Of course, if you're modeled after dough, you would hope that they can shapeshift. 2. Millennius. He has only popped up once to fight both Thor and the Silver Surfer. He was imprisoned by Odin and another dimension years ago because he tried to destroy all life everywhere on Earth. I do think that warrants a lockup. He was not only powerful enough to, well, try that, but also to fight Thor and the Silver Surfer at once and give them a hard time. 1. Jack the Ripper, the Parasite. You ever see something that just makes you sick of Marvel? Because that is what Jack the Ripper, the Parasite is for me. So, infamous Jack wasn't actually a person in the Marvel Universe, but a parasite sent from the Dark Dimension by Dormammu that would take root in a host and then encourage them to commit terrible crimes and act as sort of an earthly host for the demon. Because the first set of atrocities he committed gave him the name Jack the Ripper, every host from that point forward took up that mantle, kind of. Then years down the road, Jack possesses an actor, Ben Wolf, working on a slasher project. Ben is involved in a nuclear explosion because of course he is, and now he has the ability to produce knives out of energy. Driven mad by the parasite, Wolf begins to act out his script in real life, taking someone close to Thor and attempting to eliminate an entire women's shelter. Thankfully, he was stopped by Thor, but what a wild ride. 10. Brother Toad. Brother Toad is the king of the deviants and fought Thor when the Thunder God happened to be working with the Eternals. Brother Toad has no powers, just kind of the regular deviant physiology. He did have an oversized head though, which made it hard. 9. Takots. Bloodthirsty and speaks in rhyme. What more could you want from a villain? He first appeared in New York, which meant not only did he fight Thor, but also Spider-Man. Whatever he touches rots, like cars, buildings, nothing and no one is safe. He can also make copies of himself and fly, but thankfully he does have a weakness when it comes to sound frequencies, because otherwise, no weakness, yeah, just pack that up. 8. Hiram. Hiram pilots a death ship made of finger and toenails. Truly, that ship is the last place I would ever want to be, but it isn't the most interesting thing about him. He's a giant. When Asgard was in turmoil thanks to Ragnarok, Hiram was one of the many that attacked it. He also managed to land a damaging blow to Thor's hammer, but was able to be taken out by Iron Man, which kind of feels a little bit like plot armor, as much as I do love Tony Stark. 7. Jared Carstairs, inventor, weatherman, stalker. 3 things that typically should not go together. Due to the stalking, Jared was fired as the local weatherman. He couldn't handle not having the weather in his life though, so he became Weathermaker. He invented a suit that could create weather, like rain, tornadoes, lightning, and hail. He was a danger for everyone. Thor destroyed the Weathermaker's power pack, stripping the villain of his powers, leading to his arrest. 6. Black Toad. I love this one because he looks like a Batman knockoff in a bedsheet, but his name is Black Toad. How does that work? Chuck MacArthur managed a star baseball team, and when that team got really big, he wanted to own the team. The owner wasn't actually willing to sell though, and Chuck lost it. He took on the villainous title of Black Toad and started hurling poison darts at people, including his own star players. At the next game, understandably, no one wanted to play, but Captain America was like, I'll join the game and handle this. Black Toad rigged the baseball into a Luckily, Captain America was able to throw it far enough in the sky that no one was hurt. In the end, Black Toad couldn't handle his failure and was his own demise. 5. The Planner. The Planner managed to successfully frame Captain America for a series of on-TV robberies. His goal was to lure out the real Captain America and steal his shield. He believed that the shield had extra powers to it. He refused to believe that it was simply a sheet of metal that was just, like a strong metal, but it's not the shield that holds the power, it's the person that uses it. In the end, Captain America does take down the Planner and presumably arrests him. 4. Butterfly. Dr. Vitrioli was a curator for a museum that organized the very exhibition he intended to rob. He took up the villain identity Butterfly. I don't really know why though, because he looks more like a mosquito to me. I rest my case. Butterfly was actually eliminated mid-air when Cap threw his shield at him, and the artifacts were hopefully returned. 3. Balthar. Balthar is a sorcerer practicing dark magic, and in an effort to gain absolute power, he decided to call upon Satan. In exchange for enhanced abilities, Satan requested that he be brought the greatest champion for good, aka Captain America. Balthar sets out to capture Captain America with his new power of literally evil eyes. If he looks at you too long, you kick the bucket. Balthar is defeated when he catches sight of his own reflection in Captain America's shield. Cap then goes on to literally fight Satan in this comic, and he of course wins because of the goodness in his own eyes. You really do have to love the early Captain America lore. 2. Creeper. Creeper was sent by the Yahtzees to cause as much chaos in the US as possible. So he lied, he stole, and in particular, he stole 3 rubies with major cultural significance in a bid to upset an important treaty signing. Captain America was able to uncover all 3 rubies that were hidden in separate locations around everywhere. The Creeper's location actually is still unknown though. He got away in the end. The good news is the treaty was signed, so we gotta hold on to those victories, and the Creeper hasn't been seen since 1942, so I think we're probably good there. But number 1, the Fiddler. The Fiddler was a Yahtzee that perfected the art of destruction through the violin. He learned what pitches could cause physical pain, shatter eardrums, and even trigger explosives. He planted explosives in many senators' radios, and the idea was that he would perform on the radio and eventually hit the notes of death, triggering the radios to blow. And it actually worked, so he might just be the most successful evil on this list. In the end, he was defeated by his own gimmick when he tried to eliminate Bucky, who had the foresight to plug his ears with cotton and instead managed to eliminate himself with his own mad music. 10. Gorilla Man. Starting with probably the most popular on the list today, with about 40 appearances and a really weird origin story. Arthur was a surgeon that specialized in gorilla to human transplants. One day, the gorillas that he was using revolted and transplanted Arthur's head onto a gorilla body as revenge or something, I don't know, but Gorilla Man briefly fought Captain America in the Marvel Age Annual, but he's faced off against many Marvel heroes. 9. Allergen Gang. You know those spring allergies that just won't quit? Well, it could actually be these villains. The Allergen Gang has one job, and that is to spread allergens throughout the city to cause specifically breathing problems. The gang is made up of the leader, Allergen Al, Dust Dragon, Feather Boa, Furball, Mold Patrol, Rugburn, Stogies, and Asthma Monster. These creatures, they were created when Marvel partnered with Glaxo Inc., which is an asthma inhaler company. 8. Black Talon. Black Talon was once a very talented artist, Pascal Horta. Unfortunately, Pascal ended up in an accident and needed a right hand transplant. The donor was a really terrible person that strangled. The donor's hand presumably started to warp Pascal's mind. He could still control the hand, but I guess the donor's evil was so great that it led to him painting more grotesque and violent images, and eventually move on to committing crimes and leaving paintings of victims' last moments as his calling card. In the end, he was captured and taken to prison. 7. Tybalt Circus. This is also the circus of crime in more modern comics, but the OG circus was a Yahtzee front, which is not that surprising. Their job was to travel around and take out high-ranking officials. Every night, to decide who will be that victim, leader Fritz would spin the wheel of death that had all the targets' faces, and whoever it landed on was the unlucky party. Now, this is actually, unfortunately, a pretty smart idea. A traveling caravan of people trained to do the outlandish and dangerous, like sword work and swallowing, tiger and lion control, trapeze. Like, when you really think about it, a circus is a very dangerous place and has some pretty dangerous people. In the end, Cap saved the day and Fritz returned to Germany, where he was eliminated. 6. Minotaur. Minotaur was once a regular guy with a mad scientist father. The problem was he also had an unspecified but incurable disease. Not to worry though, because his mad scientist father found a mystical chemical recipe in the ruins of a maze, and he was willing to just try that. It did work at first, and his son was healed, but then he just kept changing and eventually became a Minotaur. His father forced him to raid nearby villages for materials, which caught the attention of Iron Man. There was this big, epic battle in a secret underground cavern that collapsed eventually on Minotaur and his father, and they haven't been seen again. 5. Thunderball. Thunderball is definitely on the more popular side when it comes to Iron Man villains, but I thought he was neat. With intellect comparable to Bruce Banner, Dr. Elliot Franklin managed to invent a mini gamma-ray explosive. Unfortunately, Franklin wasn't able to get funding in the traditional ways, so he turned to robberies. While in prison, he met the men that formed the Wrecking Crew, a criminal team powered by various wrecking equipment enhanced by magic. Thunderball's weapon of choice was, of course, a wrecking ball. 4. Gargantus. Gargantus was a robot made by a mysterious alien race that kind of honestly looked like puppets when I saw them, but they had the intention to rule over humanity as alien races usually do. He was modeled after early humanity and did manage to take control of an entire city. The problem was a resident of that city had a date with Tony Stark, and when she didn't show up, he looked into why, leading to the discovery of this early alien takeover. Iron Man defeated the robot by literally ripping him apart with magnets. 3. Spores. In Iron Man 157, these random alien spores were en route to attack Earth, but they took a pit stop in Iron Man's space station to fight the hero. The spores eventually grew in size to this snake worm thing. Eventually, we do find out from this other alien race that the spores, they fly across the galaxy, consuming mechanical energy. Iron Man fixes this by altering their metabolic modes so they take nourishment from starlight instead, and they roam around more out of curiosity from now on. 2. The Mad Pharaoh. Now this is a wild ride. The Mad Pharaoh was from ancient Egypt, of course. He rebelled against Cleopatra, but when he realized that he was losing, he used dark magic to place himself in suspended animation and tucked himself away for thousands of years. Discovered in the modern age by Iron Man and awoken, the Mad Pharaoh decided to use modern technology to go back in time to again try and defeat Cleopatra. But he needed Tony Stark's help, so he created a disease that would decimate Earth unless Tony agreed, of course. Using the Chariot of Time, the pair did make it back to ancient Egypt, but Iron Man faked his death. He went to help Cleopatra, and the Mad Pharaoh fell on his sword after attempting to flee back to the future. 1. Weasel. Weasel made the top of this list because of his rags to riches story. This small-time criminal managed to break into Stark Industries and steal the case with Tony's Iron Man armor inside. He then went on a crime spree dressed as the superhero. Eventually, Tony tracked him down in an older version of the Iron Man suit, and though he was at a disadvantage with older technology, his advantage was that he designed the suit that Weasel was wearing, so it wasn't hard for him to trick Weasel into using up all the suit's energy and then later arrest him. 10. Technovore. Technovore is more popular, but is still kind of an obscure Iron Man villain, appearing in various TV shows and even anime, as well as, of course, the comics. Technovore originated from nanotech created on a space station, and believe it or not, Tony Stark was actually against nanotech at first, which is funny considering where the MCU ended with his suits. What started out as a small problem quickly turned into a waking nightmare. Technovore absorbed anything that it came in contact with. In the end, the nanotech monster was uncontainable, and the only option was to cause an explosion big enough to take most of it out. A small sample did survive though, and was later found at source control. 9. Doctor Strange. Now this is not the hero that you're thinking of, but instead the less popular scientist, Carlo Strange. His lack of ethics and wild theories lost him respect within the scientific community, and also eventually sent him to prison. He was struck by lightning, which increased the electrical energy of his brain, making him smarter smarter. He used his new intelligence to build a machine capable of mind-controlling Iron Man and had the hero free him from jail. With his new freedom, he vowed to take over the world, and to do so, he launched a powerful explosive as a warning into the atmosphere, and basically said there's more where that came from and told every country to surrender to him. Obviously, it doesn't work. Iron Man beat him, but Strange escaped and later expired at the hands of the Punisher. 8. Commander Kraken. Commander Kraken, the modern-day pirate, worked with Hydra and kidnapped some Stark employees, and of course, Tony Stark himself. Equipped with an electricity shooting sword and bionic leg that allows him to fly, the Commander had everything he needed to give Iron Man a run for his money. He lost in the end, of course, and Iron Man destroyed his fleet, but he did give it a really good try. 7. The Demolisher. From the second Iron Man comic, we have the Demolisher, a robot created by Drexel Ford to destroy Iron Man. Unfortunately, the robot went a little off script and tried to eliminate more than just Iron Man, including Ford's daughter. The villain and the hero had to work together to destroy this creation. Much later, like decades later, a copy or maybe even like the same robot popped up again and was defeated when Iron Man literally ripped it apart. 6. White Dragon. Amazing Spider-Man 184. Leader of an NYC gang, the White Dragon is a regular martial artist masterman with a sick outfit. It breathes fire and gas and has claws. He appeared a few times over the years, but in the end was sacrificed, but he wanted to be, so that makes it a little better, I guess. 5. Dr. Time. From Spidey Super Stories 44, Dr. Time controls time using a magical clock or just magic clock abilities. Obviously, he tries to use them to take over the world. Spider-Man and this issue's teammate, Vision, have a hard time containing this villain, and he's only defeated when he forgets to wind his magic clock and his powers all but disappear. 4. Skinhead. Web of Spider-Man 56, and this is a crazy story. Edward Cross was a Jewish boy that turned into the very thing that hated him, Yahtzee with an N because we can't say the actual word on here. Yeah, he joined one of those groups and basically went insane. He tried to hurt people with this group, including planting explosives, and in the ensuing battle with Spider-Man got a corrosive but not lethal substance on him that essentially made him a man-shaped dripping blob. Eventually, he was reverted back to his human form and taken to jail. 3. The Empathoid. Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man 6. The Empathoid is what it says on the tin, an empathetic robot. It was created by an alien race to simply just stay attuned to the emotions of its master, but being a robot, it outlived its creators and eventually shut down, only to be woken up years later by Morbius's big emotions. It began craving bigger emotions like fear and violence and panic and fused with the vampire, which is how it ended up on Earth. It eventually fused with Spider-Man, and Peter came up with an unconventional way of getting rid of the pest, taking himself to a football game. All the emotion in the stadium caused the robot to overload and shut down. 2. Fusion. Amazing Spider-Man 208. Twin brothers Hubert and Pinky might be identical, but their lives couldn't be more different. One a scientist and one a janitor, but soon their paths would cross in an unexpected way when Hubert's experiment went sideways, combining the two brothers together. Luckily, it wasn't permanent. They can fuse and separate at will, but the real power is their energy absorption. Any form of energy can increase their size and strength. Hubert wanted to use the power for bad, Pinky for good. In the end, they were captured by the Stranger and kept for observation. And 1. Persuader. Web of Spider-Man 35. Roland Rayburn was a mutant, and he didn't know. He just thought he was really good at persuading people. That was actually, of course, his mutant ability, and he has a pretty goofy weakness to it, where if his target knows that he can persuade them, he just can't do it anymore. It's really weird. He was forced to work for Kingpin and ended up facing off against Spider-Man and the Punisher. The latter ended up being Roland's end. 10. Silencer. From Peter Parker's Spider-Man / Elektra 98. The Silencer is a mob boss, and he looks kind of like a cross between Freddy Krueger and Slenderman. He's the kind of mob boss that nobody wants to work for, though, because his own staff are terrified of him, because literally no one is safe from being silenced. I get the whole, like, instill fear thing in your workers, but also cool it. You can't be a mob boss without your mob. He also only speaks Italian, and he's seemingly just made of darkness. It's classic, mysterious darkness composition, but in the end, he was absorbed into a rock and never seen again. 9. Spark. From Web of Spider-Man 74, Spark was a performance artist in the modern avant-garde. He sits on a stage in front of an audience for 15 minutes doing nothing kind of realm. He was recruited by the villain group Avant-Garde, a team of artists artist with enhanced abilities and bound souls. Spark's abilities were enhanced strength and some level of energy/electricity. 8. Megawatt. From Spider-Man Unlimited 2, Megawatt is a criminal turned struggling actor turned supervillain turned successful actor. Dirk Layden needed a job quickly, so he agreed to the one thing that you shouldn't agree to in the Marvel Universe, which is being the subject of a mad scientist experiment. It's how he got the ability to absorb and project electricity, becoming Megawatt. He fled to Australia after a job gone wrong, got a job there as a stuntman, then worked his way up to becoming a famous movie star, and also, of course, supervillain. 7. Akasha the Living Pharaoh. Sensational Spider-Man 19. She's living the dream of every Egypt-obsessed kid. Akasha was out riding her bike and collided with the living pharaoh just like pieces. She was physically okay, but didn't know that she had absorbed the living pharaoh like spirit. So when her family took a trip to the Museum of Natural History, the Egypt exhibit ended up awakening that part of her, and she gained mystical abilities, a staff, the ability to blast energy, and also the desire to revert the Earth to ancient Egypt's glory days. At the end of the day, Spider-Man does save her, but she does also grow wings and then just like leaves, and we barely see her again. 6. Bloody Bess. We love her, a pirate, part of the Crimson Pirates, fighting the X-Men and taking the team. Bess was in charge of keeping them in check. The X-Men did escape, of course, like they're the X-Men, and Bess later returned and even had a little moment with Nightcrawler. They had a little thing going. Last we know of Bloody Bess, she has dedicated her days to finding her old pirate friends. All in all, very cool character on a cool team, and yet she has less than 10 appearances, which is a crime. 5. Collective Man. This villain is actually 5 brothers merged into one. When they merged together, they apparently gained a connection to everyone in China. The connection allows Collective Man to draw on power from any Chinese person they want. Drawing on 10,000 people's strength gave Collective Man enough muscle to handle Sasquatch, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The brothers almost passed away from absorbing too many people's life forces at one time. The brothers also have a very odd ability. They can make any Chinese person a clone of one of the brothers and then merge with them. They have a hive mind, meaning they can mentally speak to each other, plus if they just want to like speak to each other the old-fashioned way, but they're far away, they can teleport to where their brother happens to be. 4. Black Shadow and White Shadow. This mutant's name went unrevealed, but Wolverine gifted him the nickname of Man Mountain, so there is that. The mutant in question has multiple personality disorder, and that went hand in hand with his mutant status because he was capable of generating shadow energy forms. So for 2 of his personalities, he had 2 shadowy figures, Black Shadow and White Shadow. Black Shadow was destruction. Everything it saw was fair game to be messed up. White Shadow was set on stopping Black Shadow, and the mutant, well, he was trapped in an asylum while the shadows ransacked the city. 3. El Tigre. Juan Merzos was a treasure hunter specifically focused on treasures from the ancient world, and he's a menace. That is literally what he is described as on the cover of his debut comic. He found an amulet that belonged to a Mayan sun god, granting him an array of powers like telepathy, telekinesis, and something called precognition, knowing if danger is coming or near. El Tigre, with all those powers, only exists when he has part of the Sky God's amulet. When both pieces are put together, then he just turns into the Sky God. 2. Pink Lady. She's so fun and isn't so much a villain as she is just like a general troublemaker. Her and Wolverine cross paths because Wolverine was tasked with capturing the pink mink. When the pink mink is exposed to oxygen, the Pink Lady appears, and here on Earth we have a lot of that oxygen. She spent some time here in Toronto, Canada when she was captured by Hunter Joe. Pink Lady had limited hypnotic powers and unlimited teleportation abilities. She was in search of fun, and I mean, girls just want to have fun, so you can't really blame her for that at all. 1. Roadshow Brotherhood. Nightcrawler was a circus boy and then was tipped off about some monsters posing as humans. The monsters pretty quickly surrendered to Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and it didn't take long for the pair to realize the fake humans weren't the real monsters. That would be Nightcrawler's childhood friend that runs the Roadshow Brotherhood. The gaggle of villains are strange to say the least. They're all supercharged versions of like classic circus acts. There's a bearded lady that can control her facial hair so she can make it grow really, really long and trap you in it. The strong man is just like extra strong. There's clowns. I don't know what powers they have, but they bite a lot. The circus was used by a scientist for experimentation, and in return, they got powers to fight the monsters. Wolverine puts an end to Nightcrawler's deranged former childhood friend, and unfortunately, the monsters are no more by the end of the issue 2. They do forgive the humans forgive the monsters, but there's just no monsters at the end, unfortunately, and no circus either, fortunately. 10. Blood Shadow. A Wolverine villain with a very cool concept. His mutant ability was telepathy, with the added benefit of a complete understanding of the human body and what nerves to hit to make someone pass out. So he will not only know your next move in a fight using his telepathy, he will do that and also calculate in his head what nerve bundles he will have access to in that moment and press them so you pass out. It makes Blood Shadow leave most fights unscathed and his opponent absolutely crumpled. In his final appearance, Blood Shadow took telepathy a bit too far, attempting to mess with Wolverine's head. He accidentally unlocked Wolverine's basic animal instincts, and soon he was nothing more than a puddle. 9. Smoke and Succubus. Not much is known about these villains since they appeared and disappeared just as quick. Smoke is a cloud of smoke that can still be hurt. Wolverine sliced right across the middle, and the two halves of Smoke never actually came back together. Succubus was not a lizard, but she really looked like one. She had a tongue that was very long, so that meant she could grab things with it. She appeared very strong and had pointy claws and teeth. Neither of the two villains survived past their second appearance. 8. Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy is pretty and has some pretty cool cybernetic implants that can expand to be 3 times their length. He can access a person's brain using fiber optic filaments in his eyes, and then he just kind of like reprograms you. Pretty Boy is known for his affiliation with Donald Pierce and a membership in the merc group The Reavers. 7. Conquistador. Orlando Furio wanted to conquer the world, so he kidnapped Beast and his parents to get Hank to steal a mini energy reactor to power a machine designed to create global disasters. The X-Men eventually arrived and made sure that machine would never be used even once, and freed Hank and his parents. The Conquistador was really committed to his bit though. He carried a sword designed to look like what the Conquistadors would have had that split into a 3-pronged stun weapon, and not only did he dress the part, but he managed to find a bunch of other people who were also willing to dress like that to be his henchmen. He operated out of a building that was either from that time or built in that fashion, and no one is doing it like this anymore. Please just bring back villains that had a theme and stuck to it. 6. Destructon. This robot belonged to Zemo, and it actually faced off against Black Panther, Sharon Carter, and Captain America, and almost won, so it is pretty powerful. The only reason it was stopped was because Cap figured out where its controls were located and was able to damage them and incapacitate the robot. 5. Icon, a Wakandan biochemist who experimented on himself, resulting in gaining the ability to turn himself and others into wood. He believed that Black Panther did not respect him as a scientist, and as revenge, he decided to crash a Wakandan celebration and start turning people to wood. When someone is turned to wood, they're then under his control. Black Panther wouldn't let the Avengers attack the wooden people though, as they are still his subjects, but then out of literally nowhere comes Jungle Man to distract Icon, and it gives the Avengers their moment to start the fight, and Icon surrenders quickly. 4. King Cadaver. King Cadaver also kind of looks like an alien. He's not an alien, but his head is giant and fuzzy and green. He was part of a ritual led by our number 1 today actually, which caused the appearance and also granted him the ability to create large amounts of pain through mental attacks. Mirrors enhanced his abilities, according to the king himself. In the end, he was stopped by his former ally, number 9 Venom, and then he was stepped on by a dinosaur. It was a wild ride. 3. Baron Macabre. Another victim of the Resurrection Altar, Macabre gained the ability to raise the dead. They became zombies. His powers were a little unstable though, and the ability to create zombies is something that you want under control, so he stole some tech from Wakanda, only to get one-hit KO'd in the end by the Black Panther. 2. Kibber the Cruel. Cruel was a scientist that claimed that he was going to invent teleportation and then promptly disappeared from the public eye. Heading to the mountains, Cruel was involved in an absolutely insane experiment gone wrong. He became attached to his lab floor. Like, he's literally just a glob on the floor, and he gets things done using his androids, so he figured out a system in the end, but truly it was so weird. And finally, number 1, Somber. A Wakandan priest, Somber is not comforting in the slightest. His touch is corrosive and painful to the point where even Black Panther could pass out from the effects. There is some suggestion of telepathic powers and maybe even like a vampire thing going on. His face is this really disturbing mask with fangs embedded, which he uses to attack his victims. In the end, T'Challa kicked him in quicksand and he was gone. 10. Hatch 22. This is definitely one of the strangest villains I've ever seen, and I've done a lot of these videos, so that is saying something. Hatch is from the future, the 6th era of man. Humanity has somehow evolved into these purple, big-brained people things with psychic powers. Hatch was accidentally brought back in time, crashed out about that, evaporated a person, but then got knocked out by Black Panther and sent back to his time. 9. Venom with 2 M's, so he's not to be confused with the more popular one. Horatio was on the bad end of a chemistry accident and was left with scars covering his whole face. He didn't get any powers from this incident, but he did lose a lot of confidence and went into hiding. He filled his days with practicing snake charming and building up an immunity to all types of venom. 8. Salamander Carule. He worked for Eric Killmonger and he was the designated bow and arrow guy. There's always one on every team. Salamander's body was mutated by the resurrection altar to produce thorns from blisters all over his body. The thorns are toxic as well, just for a little bit of extra flair. 7. Madame Slay. This is such an iconic villain name for an iconic woman. Madame Slay controls leopards, whether that be through training them or a special power we don't know. She literally just lounges around with leopards all day. Talk about living the dream. She also worked closely with Eric. 6. Micah Sin. Chief of an African tribe, Micah was a piece of work. He wasn't respectable at all. He stole, he was rude, he fought anything that opposed him. He was just like a general menace to society. He even had an affair with Foggy Nelson's wife. A lot of Daredevil fans actually hated this run, citing poorly written dialogue, outdated themes and attitudes, and just generally being lackluster. In the end, Micah defeated himself due to a poor diet and being in New York City pollution. 5. Plastoid. Plastoid was a humanoid robot built to eliminate. One thing that was, I guess, like helpful to his opponents is he had a plate on his chest with his operational efficiency. If it's a 10, he's good, 1 bad, you get it. At one point, he did jump to a 50 and grew in size to meet that power. However, he wasn't really built for such a stark jump, and eventually it aided in his downfall. 4. Lady Killer, quite literally. He just sucked. He didn't like women, no reason, he just didn't. He would hunt them down under the belief they needed to be punished for simply existing. He had no powers, but it highlighted that sometimes the worst villains are the ones that actually exist in the real world and are not simply outlandish creatures. 3. Tribune, the actor turned modern day demon. A right extremist, Tribune was an actor who took his beliefs too far, creating a judge villain persona for himself. Tribune carried around a gavel that could expel fire. He tried to cause a national incident, but Daredevil of course stopped him. Tribune ended up faking his death and fled to California, where he is still acting up, but in his civilian identity now. 2. Vapora. She comes from a one-shot that was a public service announcement about the dangers of gasoline fumes. So she was really just symbolic of a greater problem and didn't actually have a personal agenda. She just kind of popped in wherever. 1. Duke Claus Kruger, the ruler of Lichtenbad. He met Daredevil on an exchange program in the US. He lured Matt back to his country in an attempt to gather all the greatest minds in the world, but his mind wasn't so great. He greatly miscalculated his own castle walls and lunged at Daredevil and literally fell off of that castle to his doom. 10. Jester. Jester was an actor first and a bad one. He did everything he could to improve his craft though, like taking classes to expand his abilities, fencing, gymnastics, basically doing everything but taking an acting class. He got fed up and decided that if people wanted to laugh at others' expense, then he would become the ultimate jester. He hired someone to make him gimmicky weapons, which I love because I always wondered where villains would get their hyper-specific themed gadgets. Jester was quite the troublemaker, creating false newscasts claiming JFK was still alive, that wars never happened, fake commercials, framing heroes. There were multiple times when Jester reached acting success though, and promptly gave up his life of crime, only to return in the end when it all dried up. 9. Deathstalker. It's actually unclear why he turned to crime because he was rich and from a powerful family, but either way, he was part of the plot that got Daredevil stuck between the physical Earth and an interdimensional realm. Daredevil was able to escape, but Stalker went in next. He could manifest a physical body on Earth, but he was kind of like a ghost, always returning back to where he came from. In the end, him and Daredevil fought in a graveyard, and Stalker miscalculated, becoming physical again while jumping through a tombstone and literally splitting himself in half. His mother avenged his death by rigging her mansion with traps and robots, and then there was a moment where Stalker was sent to the future for some reason before he died, found out what happened to him, crashed out, and then was just sent back in time with no memory of the event for some reason. 8. Matador. The Matador was actually a matador first, so at least we know where he got his name from, but he was vain and power hungry. He made some odd choices when it came to his actual profession and quickly lost public favor for his brutal methods in the ring. He was later part of the Daredevil false memories plot, but that part was not intentional. He didn't plan on doing that. 7. Ramrod. Ramrod was a construction boss involved in a pretty serious accident. He was taken by Broderick and Moondragon and genetically engineered into a cyborg for their gain. He was told that his makers could poison him at any time using his implanted metal parts, and through this blackmail fought Daredevil to try and gain control of LA. Did it work though? No, absolutely not. 6. Hyperstorm. He was a big deal, but then just kind of disappeared. He's incredibly powerful because he is the son of Franklin Richards and Rachel Summers. He can do like every superpower ever created. I mean, not really, but it certainly feels that way. He frequently jumps through space and time, which is how he fought the Fantastic Four, and to top it all off, he also happens to have gotten the intelligence of his Grandpa Reed. 5. Iconoclast. He was tasked with eliminating the Invisible Woman before she could do it to his people. Was she going to do that? Probably not. Iconoclast has access to advanced cloaking tech, rendering him invisible and intangible to anyone who wasn't the Invisible Woman, essentially. Or well, no one can know an invisible person quite like an invisible person. He was only defeated when his suit was disabled by water and exploded. 4. Oculus the Unforgiving. I mean, with a name like that. He earned the title by becoming the most powerful being in his realm and forcibly taking control. Oculus drew power from the gem in his right eye. He was ruthless and didn't even spare his own family, leading to them assisting the Fantastic Four in finding a way to defeat the man. In the end, he wasn't actually defeated, just launched into space, so he could come back. It's just gonna take a while. 3. Thorn. From the Salem 7, we have Thorn. He looks so special. As you might guess from the name, his offensive power is the ability to throw thorns that stun, cut, or explode. Honestly, I picked him because his full yellow morph suit and red thorns just looked a bit too goofy to pass up. 2. Tyrannith Gelstal. This villain actually rendered Reed Richards mindless. He stole his intellect. Tyrannith the alien crash-landed onto a planet in the negative zone and found himself in need of energy to get up and running again. He found that energy in the minds of the planet's inhabitants. Tyrannith posed as their ruler and would select people in the guise of being a chosen one and then just drain their brain. When the Fantastic Four encountered the planet, Reed was recognized by Tyrannith as a genius and quickly became the final piece to the puzzle. In the end, Reed's brain wasn't completely gone, and he managed to thwart the villain's plans, getting his brain back on Earth, although the alien had a lasting effect as Reed realized the ship still had the memories he recalled the least. And number 1, Dr. Doomsday. Truly, this is the worst that it could get for the team, and that is why they are number 1. From Marvel vs. DC, Dr. Doomsday is Marvel's Dr. Doom and DC's Doomsday in one villain. Folks, again, it can't get worse than that. All of their powers and intelligence mashed up into one champion of destruction. It's a miracle anyone even made it out alive. 10. The Jeweler. The villain that you've never seen or never were supposed to. The Jeweler doesn't come from the comics, but the 1994 unreleased Fantastic Four movie. Despite the movie never being released officially, copies still made the rounds, so maybe some true devoted fans have actually seen this guy. He stole a massive diamond and Alicia Masters before being defeated. The real tea with this though, the movie was unreleased, right? Well, apparently the rumor is that the studio only made the film because they needed to keep the rights to the characters but weren't ready to do a full-scale film yet, so they made this low-budget version and never actually intended to release it. However, the cast and crew didn't know that, which is pretty shady if it's true. 9. Airwalker. Airwalker was a herald of Galactus and became a herald willingly, which is pretty uncommon, but it ended up really working in his favor because he became one of Galactus's favorites. He got to hear all his super cool stories about the universe because Airwalker actually cared about them. In fact, when Airwalker did meet his end, Galactus created a perfect android replica of him and transferred the man's consciousness into it. 8. The Acrobat. The Acrobat got the Fantastic Four to work against each other. He convinced the Human Torch that his teammates were exploiting Johnny and taking credit for his work. So instead of working with them, he should team up with the Acrobat and become the Torrid Twosome, a heroic duo motivated by reward money. In the end, of course, the Acrobat was lying. He told Johnny that a bank teller was stuck in a vault, and Johnny did not clock the suspiciousness of that, melting his way into an empty room, giving the Acrobat the chance to blast the well-meaning hero with his asbestos spray and escape with the cash. The Acrobat went on to commit various other crimes, including impersonating Captain America and Hawkeye. 7. Jihad. This villain has appeared once, sent the team on a quest to find magical items for him, has goals to conquer all dimensions, and we will never see that come to pass, and not for the reason you think. See, most villains are defeated by by the superheroes, Jihad was affected by real-world events. The villain's goals put a bad taste in people's mouths after the events of September in 2001, so it's really unlikely we're ever gonna see him again. 6. Icon. Icon appeared in 2 issues as a Wakandan biochemist who experimented on himself with the advanced tech Wakanda had to offer. The experiments resulted in him gaining the ability to turn himself and others into wood. He had the idea in his head that Black Panther didn't respect him as a scientist. Not true, by the way. But one night during a Wakandan celebration, Icon shows up and starts turning people to wood. Luckily, the Avengers are in attendance, something that he didn't plan for. He does have an ace up his sleeve. When someone turns to wood, they are then under his control. Black Panther wouldn't let the Avengers attack the wooden people though, as they're still his subjects, but worry not, out of literally nowhere comes this guy called Jungle Man to distract Icon. Jungle Man gives the Avengers their moment to start the fight, but Icon surrenders very quickly. 5. Grotesque. Grotesque fought against the X-Men. It was the guy that everyone thought eliminated Professor X, but he didn't because he was actually Changeling. But then he went on to be a menace to Miss Marvel next. She also hit him with something that should have ended him. He again survived and fought the Avengers. In this particular battle, he was part of a group of subterranean beings that were initially fleeing their home underground because it was being attacked by deviants. Grotesque was a villain at heart through, and later after that battle kidnapped Thor's human host Donald Blake, holding him hostage, while Grotesque's lava man brought the living rock to the surface, and that idea was like the living rock would then blow up a lot of the surface world, I guess. Thor made sure that didn't happen and broke the rock before it could come up. All the energy from the rock supposedly destroyed Grotesque, but it turns out the energy just destroyed his body, not his spirit, so that was still floating around. The lava man took that spirit and put it in an impenetrable armor, and he went on to fight the X-Men. Again, Nightcrawler found the cheat code to defeat the spirit armor Grotesque. He took off his helmet, and that caused the spirit to dissipate. 4. Cactus. The West Coast Avengers get all the weird villains. Cactus is a cactus created by the Dominius computer from a desert cactus. The computer gave this cactus human-like mobility and intelligence. This cactus is the original cactus, but there's hundreds of duplicates out there apparently. Cactus's powers are shooting his cactus needles at a destructive speed and regenerating quickly, as he is technically a superpowered plant. 3. Sunstroke. The leader of the group of desert misfits Cactus was in was Sunstroke. He was a human, but we don't actually know how he got his powers. The villain just says that he created himself, whatever that means. All he says to explain that is a man's sense of strategy was melded with the power of the Day Star. Merging with this power made him capable of absorbing light and heat. He can also generate light and heat to attack with. He did threaten to melt the armor off Iron Man's back. He fought the Avengers in the desert that day and disappeared shortly after that battle was ultimately lost. He resurfaced to attend a weapons expo and briefly fought Captain America. He went on to fight the X-Men. Later he joined the Masters of Evil, but was arrested after the team unsuccessfully took on the Thunderbolts. 2. Jason Rowland. Making a deal with the devil is a common occurrence in the Marvel Universe. Actor Jason Rowland joined the trend in Tower of Shadows 5. Acting success in exchange for his soul. The demon was revealed to be created by Dormammu and one of the most powerful demons seen by Earth. Jason's side effect was that he looked like a monster, so he stayed out of the spotlight for a few years. Eventually, he met the mercenary group Night Shift and took over the team. He convinced the team to give up their souls so he could have more fame and power. The West Coast Avengers and Night Shift, while initially at odds, joined forces once the Night Shift realized that their souls were in jeopardy. 1. Necronomus. Necronomus was born all shriveled up. His body was incredibly weak. The natural fix here is to turn to dark magic. That's the only thing you can do. Necro discovered that he can gain a strength and even a godlike form if he steals the lives of innocent people, which is a classic move. The first time he tried it, he was defeated by the Defenders. The second time he tried it, he was stopped by the Avengers, specifically Scarlet Witch. She sent his soul straight to Limbo. Eventually, he did make it out of Limbo and fought the Fantastic Four and then was sent back to Limbo. Eventually, the shriveled man was taken care of by Agatha Harkness when she created zombies to attack him. He did have quite the run though. Agatha, Fantastic Four, Defenders, and of course the Avengers. Even though Necro's physical body was weak, he still had some magical powers like flight, teleportation, energy bolts, and shields. 10. Defiler. You know the conspiracy that every celebrity is like secretly a member of a demonic group? Well, Marvel actually did that once. Defiler fought the West Coast Avengers and he's a demon. His particular brand of demon does not reside in our dimension, but does need the life force of others to survive and maintain his powers. He decided to come and kidnap people on Earth, but he did it with style. Arriving as a rock star, his band was called the Corruption of Innocence. It really wasn't hard for the guy to get people to literally follow him anywhere, and when he finished them off, there were hundreds of others willing to take their place. The Defiler took everything up a notch at one of their concerts and started kidnapping the entire crowd, and that's not even the wildest part of this issue. To save all of the people that had been transported through the portal, portal to the demon dimension, Hank Pym and Mockingbird go to that dimension with a big rope tied around Pym. There are at least 100 people to save though, and all of their life forces have been depleted, so they're too weak to walk out, so that's solution. Hank Pym takes a fingerboard and turns it into a huge skateboard so everyone can ride it out. The Defiler ultimately gets defeated when he is thrown back into his own world. 9. Elementals. I don't think these villains are human. They refer to humans as humans, and usually if you are a human, you would make a point to do that. In their single issue, we meet the whole team of elements. There's 4 of them: chlorine, carbon, phosphorus, vanadium, and radium. Referred to as the Elementals, they catch the attention of the Avengers because they are messing with a nuclear reactor. They are trying to create 100 more element people. My guess is they want the whole periodic table. They fail, and the Avengers eventually defeat them. 5 of them in there. 8. Echidna, the mother of monsters both in Greek mythology and Marvel mythology. She has fought the Avengers a few times and was affiliated with the Defenders of the Deep. She helped King Namor keep humans out of the water when the king declared the ocean off limits to everything that wasn't native to it. Echidna was also part of the Doom Maidens. During her time there, she attempted to recruit the Amazons, but ended up fighting the Amazons and losing. Most of her scraps with the Avengers happened while she was on the Defenders of the Deep. Eventually, she fought Ghost Rider and was neutralized by him. 7. Jared Carstairs. This guy was primarily a villain to Thor, but he did scrap with the Avengers as well. A skilled inventor and weatherman, Jared was not a good person. He stalked someone to the point of getting fired from being a local weatherman. He couldn't handle not having the weather in his life, so he became Weathermaker. He created a suit that could create weather, not just sunny days, but also rain and tornadoes and lightning and hail. He was a force to be reckoned with. He ended up kidnapping the person that he stalked, and that's when the Avengers stepped in. Weathermaker did a decent job holding off the Avengers until Thor came back and destroyed the suit's power pack. Without it, the Weathermaker was just a guy, and he was just a guy who got arrested. 6. Centaurus. About 2,000 years ago, a prince sold his soul to Mephisto in exchange for the ability to retrieve his stolen lover. His mission was a success. Unfortunately though, a lack of soul means a lack of ability to feel anything like love, for example, so he ended up leaving his lover and wandering the earth, becoming Centaurus along the way. His goal became getting a new soul, so he stole the Crystal of Souls, and then it was one of those things where you kind of like misdirect your anger. He wanted a soul so bad that he stole others as punishment. He later became a power broker for villains, which brought him into conflict with Ghost Rider, and despite a really interesting premise, not much has been done with him. 5. Moondark. This sorcerer turned Ghost Rider into a carnival attraction. Peter Parker was enjoying a day at the fair. He got tickets to a show, only to get the shock of his life when out walks the flaming skeleton, Ghost Rider. Turns out Moondark used his mystical orb to capture Johnny Blaze's soul, thus putting the Ghost Rider under his control and under the big tent. Peter recognized Johnny, but there wasn't much he could do as a civilian, so he returned later as Spider-Man. One flaming motorcycle roller coaster ride later, Peter frees Johnny's soul, and the pair work together to do the same for the rest of the circus troupe, and Moondark's soul is dragged back to the spirit realm, never to be seen as a main character again. 4. Dark Love. After experiencing heartbreak in his own story at the hands of Mephisto, because literally who else would it be, he was cursed to always perform the opposite of love and was trapped in a love spell in the Darkhold. Basically, that means that when Dark Love was eventually released, he encouraged lovers to take each other out, and not in the fun way. Ghost Rider was able to defeat Dark Love using his penance stare, but not before the demon had thoroughly ransacked New York City's dating scene. 3. Isaiah. Folks, I don't know why there are so many soul orbs and crystals, but we do have another one. Long ago, Isaiah the Crimson Mage stole a magical orb from some demons. The orb enhanced existing abilities, but most importantly extended the mage's lifespan so long as the glow remained strong. To try and cheat the system and live longer, Isaiah reasoned that by tying himself to an immortal creature, he would also then become immortal. The logic is sound, the choice of creature was not. He chose Ghost Rider. Johnny smashed his orb, and Isaiah disintegrated into dust. 2. Skinbender. This demon fell in love with Ghost Rider. She has the ability to mold herself and others into whatever she wants, but in her appearance decided to take on the form of a Sailor Moon character, which is as uncomfortable as you think it will be. She used her powers to attack a town and turn the residents into monsters, catching the attention of our hero. Skinbender was fascinated by Ghost Rider's fiery form and quickly fell in love. Now this gave Ghost Rider an easy in to save the townsfolk, but now he also had a deranged fangirl that even after being melted down, still obsessed over Blaze. She is another demon that cannot be destroyed, but at least Past that one appearance, she hasn't been seen again. And number 1, Clarice Van Ripper, the most evil person on this list probably. She allowed the young residents of her community access to her home to play, but she felt that in return she deserved something, her own sick form of entertainment. She would remove the visitors in horrible ways and eventually bound her soul to a demon, causing another whole set of problems. Eventually, Ghost Rider began investigating and discovered the evil that lived in this house, eliminating her demon, resulting in Clarice's demise, but not before a healthy dose of the penance stare.